my lovely daughter, whatever, is marrying my son Sam, and it's very.
sharing my in-laws post.
Oh, that was not evident in the whole. It looked like it was your post. Yeah, his in-laws post, yeah. So I'm asking, I said, Brian, read this because I don't know what we've been doing, but I'm not understanding this. And he's like, I don't understand either. So I'm like,
Congrats.
yeah. So it's good.
Exciting.
And when are they getting married? Do they know?
December 1st.
Oh, that'll be fun.
Oh, geez.
Is school out by then? Are they going to school?
He's not.
Okay.
I don't know.
I was trying to think when the breaks are that Zubies and you people can, you Zubies? We always called them Zubies. Yeah,
Sounds good.
we randomly ran into some over the weekend. So it came back to my brain. Well, that's cool. So how many unmarried children will you have at the end of this?
All right, thanks.
So I have 5 children.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. There's no story. Yeah. It took him about 10 seconds. I was trying to.
And is Jake here today?
I haven't heard that he wouldn't be, so I'm assuming he's on his way.
Sweet.
And Don was zooming in, but I think he's having some technical issues, so they're helping him get back on.
Okay. Oh, staff is? Or Nisha is?
Staff it.
Okay,
Just double checking in there.
that's awesome.
Oh, and it looks like Jake just joined us on.
Okay. And how was your weekend?
Good.
Good.
I don't think there's anything
Anything eventful?
particularly eventful. Doesn't seem like it. Pretty quiet.
Those are nice.
Looks
I'm
like we
looking
got him.
forward to them. Oh, I got them both on. Okay. All right, we'd like to welcome everyone and call to order the study meeting for the West Valley City Council. It is September 19th, 2023. We are beginning at 4:30 PM in the multipurpose room of West Valley City Hall. We have Councilman Fitzsimmonu and Councilman Christensen on Zoom with us. And at the table, we have Councilman Whetstone, Councilman Harmon, Councilman Christensen, myself. Who did I say?
Christian.
Sorry, Nordfeld, not Christensen twice.
I'm in his seat.
Yeah, that might be what, I don't know. There's no excuses today. We have our city recorder, Nicole Kamick, and our city manager, Wayne Pyle. We have our minutes from September 12th, 2023. I'll turn it to the council for discussion or a motion.
Motion to approve the September 12th study minutes.
Just a correction on the minutes. The first paragraph says Tim Hune.
Oh, okay. I'll fix that.
I think actually all the way through it says Tim.
Oh, I think it's Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Pro Tem.
all right. Not- You don't even.
Mayor
good.
Pro Tom.
I will second the way they are.
Yeah, I saw one, the word B should be in there, but I didn't take good enough notes, so.
Thank you.
We'll
I'll
do that
I'll
later.
do another quick glance through.
Well, if I can get it, I'll get it to you. Okay.
Mhm.
All right, all in favor of the amendment, or there, we don't have to make amendments to the, I'm not even gonna get there. To the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, we'll go with Corey's. If we didn't hear Don, we're just gonna say he was for it. All right, we have our agenda for tonight. And Mr. Pyle, are there any changes or adjustments?
Yes, ma'am. Thanks. The one item we have for action, we're also asking the council to consider action on in the regular meeting tonight. That's the replacement of this boiler over at the Performing Arts Center.
Okay.
In which I'm gonna have Jake, if you want to talk about it for a sec, just to describe what's happened.
Sure.
It's not very complicated, but just for your
Oh, right there.
interest and information.
Yes, thank you, Mayor and Council. Jake Arslanian, Facilities Director. The Performing Arts Center, as you all know, is about 20 somewhat years old. the old Harmon Theater, and the boiler is dead. Literally. So we could not revive it. Consequently, we need to put a new boiler in, and we've chosen to put in the Better boiler system, which is a tandem system. And that's why we went from a Bryant system, which is one boiler, to two boilers, which they will be working tandem, and it performs better and cost efficient and energy efficient. And there will be K and 10 boilers. And there will be, we have 3 bids, and all the companies that you see on your paperwork are from the state contracts. So we've worked with all of them in the past. And the lowest bidder at this time was American Mechanical for $145,047. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Was that about what you were anticipating it? I mean, there's a.
I was anticipating more.
Oh, yeah.
The
So
way.
the 219 is not out of the.
No,
Okay.
and again, sometimes when the two are so close and one is so far, it's kind of indicative of saying, if you want me, I'll charge you more and you choose me. Well, we're not that gullible.
Yeah, and their time might not allow it right now, so,
Yeah, I anticipated about 160, 170,
okay.
but they came a little closer. And the one, again, CCI is always a little bit higher.
Cool. Okay, no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our only action item.
That was it. Yep.
So now we'll go to our communications, which will turn the time over to Mr. Johnson for our traffic calming discussion.
Before we go there, are we gonna have a regular meeting next week?
Not so far, no.
Okay.
Okay,
If the council was not disposed to approve the boiler item tonight, then we could, bring it back next week, and we never recommended that, but
you
we're
just have a-
hoping you'll approve it because we're trying to get a little bit of jump, or at least as much as we
Yeah.
can on the cold weather season.
Yeah.
Weather's changing.
Yes, it is.
Great.
Okay, Mr. Johnson,
Mayor,
Johnson,
may I
Public
say
Works
something
Director,
before Mr.
and I've brought
Johnson?
with me, I'm gonna drop this, see if that makes any difference. Is that better?
I don't know if Mr. Christensen was trying to speak at the same time you
Oh.
were.
Maybe he was, I don't know.
I was.
Okay, did you have something to comment?
Well, I was just going to say, my first year of teaching, the boiler went out just about now, and it took them until December something to repair it. And it was cold in that school, and it was the same type of thing, just gave up, and they had to order one from Chicago. So let's get this one done.
We could change our next show to Frozen.
Then you got it.
Yeah.
There you go.
Nobody appreciates a boiler until you don't have one. So I'm here to talk traffic control, and I brought our traffic calming in neighborhoods, but I brought Eric Brondum. He's our operations engineer, and he's the lucky fellow that gets to talk to everybody that has identified speeding complaints in their neighborhood. And he has the fortunate task of oftentimes telling people no, or just working through their concerns with traffic calming. But this is an issue that the council's asked us to address, and so the first half of my presentation will be largely a repeat of previous conversations with a few updates of newer studies. And then the second half is kind of a discussion of potential policy changes, if that's something you're interested in. So as a reminder, we have a neighborhood traffic calming program that if a resident is concerned about speeding in their neighborhood, we give them a petition and say, go get 10 of your neighbors to sign it, and we will then do a study. And our current criteria for these neighborhood traffic calming studies is, well, we assess, we measure traffic, the speed, the 85th percentile speed, which is the speed that 85% of the drivers drive at that speed or lower. And then we measure the traffic volume, and then we look at other things associated with that and assign a value for those as well. But most of the points come from speed and a little bit from volume. And then as we add it all up, if the road scored less than 75 points, we have taken no action. And if you're somewhere between 75 and less than 100, then that's the threshold that we've identified that we will do some kind of passive traffic calming, which is usually a radar feedback sign. And then greater than 100 points is some kind of a physically constructed traffic calming device. And so this is a study we've shown you before. This is 2855 West, just west of 27th West, north of 3100 South. And the 85th percentile speed on that road was 32 miles per hour at 10 points per mile per hour over the speed limit. That yielded them 70 points from speed alone. 1,114 vehicles gives them 6 points for traffic volume. And then they're right near an elementary school. So we gave it an additional 5 points, totaling 81 points, and then qualifying for radar feedback signs, which have been installed. The next example, this is one you haven't seen before. This is Chatterley Road, west of 60th West and south of 3500 South. It's a long straight road. It's a steep road. And the 85th percentile speed on Chatterley Road was 35 miles per hour, 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, therefore qualifying for speed humps on speed alone. And this one was, there's definitely a speeding problem, largely attributable, in my opinion, probably to the grade, but the length of the road and the straightness of the road contributes to that. And so we installed speed humps, and they're there and doing their thing. Stanton Drive, we've talked about Stanton Drive before. Its 85th percentile speed was 30 miles per hour and giving it, so 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, giving it 50 points in speed. 589 vehicles gave it 3 points in volume. And then due to some local proximity of elementary schools, we gave it 15 points for elementary schools, and then it's right by City Park. So with the extra help from the schools in the park, it is kind of in the neighborhood that could be considered for radar feedback signs under our current criteria. And then Palmer Drive, which you've all heard of recently from the neighbors. We did it, Eric and his team recently did a study, and the 85th percentile speed on Palmer was 30 miles per hour, 5 miles per hour over the speed limit, giving it 50 speed points, and 1,550 vehicles, giving it 8 volume points. And there's 2 schools in the neighborhood. And so it's 68 points, doesn't necessarily meet the current criteria for the passive traffic calming, but it's close enough that maybe there's a case to be made, but nonetheless, it's not quite there yet. But anyhow, on Palmer and Benview, we also looked at accident data. We've received, the people that have come and spoken to the council in public comment periods mentioned that there's been a lot of accidents lately, and there have been a few, but I thought it was interesting. I looked at Palmer Drive, which is the section that they're requesting speed humps on, and Benview Drive, which is a section that has had speed humps for 20 plus years, longer than I've been here, 25 plus years. And so it's got a long history of speed humps. And surprisingly, the crash count was right down the middle. It was not heavily weighted one way or another. And so I really don't have any reason to believe that we would experience fewer crashes if there were speed humps. I just don't know that it's necessarily a factor that we would control with speed humps. A lot of these are just vehicles hitting parked cars, and kind of, I would assume, maybe a distracted thing or a snow thing, or anyways. And then you've seen this slide before. This is just kind of a map. The slide on the left shows speed humps that we currently have throughout the city and radar signs. And so the radar signs is on the right, speed humps on the left. And so our criteria that has been implemented since roughly 2005. And quite frankly, we probably put speed humps on the roads that are going to qualify under the current criteria. This is again, you've seen this slide before. This is a summary of the points, the the index points that we've assigned to each study since 2005. The red ones are those that scored over 100 that would qualify for speed humps. The orange ones are those that are between 75 and 100, and then the blue are studies that scored lower than 75. And so this is good data just to show you generally where those fall. You have a question?
Yeah, so how many of those little lines are there?
There
On that
are
speed bump?
200 and I've got that somewhere else on another slide. I'll get there, but
I couldn't get there to count it.
I think 230 or 330. I can't remember, but we're gonna get there shortly.
Okay,
Yeah, I put it on another slide, but I can't remember.
Oh,
what
okay.
number it is.
all right.
So, but we've done a lot of studies over the years. And this is a slide you've seen as well. This is just a reminder of what other cities do. And you're really gonna find examples all over the place, and they change from time to time. So Salt Lake County basically has a program that's very similar to ours. We based it on something that they had put together years ago and have stuck with it, but they're essentially doing the same program with slightly different thresholds. West Jordan has had a high use of speed humps, but they're currently stepping away from speed humps and have told me that they're, just due to the way that the pendulum swings, they're stepping away from speed humps and doing less of them. South Jordan City has used them in the past, now prohibits them by policy. Riverton prohibits them by ordinance. Sandy uses signs and radar signs, but no speed humps. Draper, they rely on the police department to do just enforcement requests as they can. Salt Lake City once had a robust traffic calming program that ended in 2005, but then they started up again strong in 2021. And so you'll see, depending on the way things go, policies change over time in varying communities. So now I just wanted to run through kind of a discussion of some of the pros and cons of speed humps as you've asked that you're contemplating a potential change in policy. So I just wanted to walk through this and kind of think through this. So the case for speed humps is that a well-designed speed hump network can lower speeds, and that there have been studies done, and that it's definitely an effective way to manage speeding in neighborhoods sometimes. And some complaints will indeed go away, but then you'll get others as well. And so,
Say we didn't want them,
what's that?
say they did not want them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there's the other side of that pancake that's quiet right now that won't be quiet when we install them. But so that's just that's kind of the positive side is that they work. You can definitely slow down speeds, but you're not going to please everybody. One negative aspect of speed humps is, it's resources. It's just another thing to build and maintain. Currently, at the rate that we build speed humps, budget is not the limiting factor. We don't tell people we can't afford a speed hump right now. If it qualifies, it gets built. But if the criteria were to change substantially, we could see ourselves in a scenario where budget is a controlling factor. And that's just a reality.
So how much does a speed bump cost?
Great question. If we can build them for very little money, about $1,000, maybe a little bit more than that a piece, $3,000, Eric says, with asphalt, with our own crews. But we also can really only do a few a year. We don't have the crews we're going to build a few in the coming weeks. And, but, right now, if we were to go robust on speed humps, I would not recommend that we use our own crews, or that we could hire more people, but we'd probably contract it out if we needed more people. But oftentimes we also build them in concrete. And this is an example. One of the negative aspects of speed humps and adding more speed humps is just the ongoing maintenance cost. Again, it's just another thing that must be maintained. And Thane Drive had speed humps installed in the late 90s. And in 2016, so these are a little bit, the prices are a little bit old, but this is a recent example of maintenance. But in 2016, we replaced the speed humps as part of an overlay project. We took them out and put them back with concrete. And 4 of them cost about $22,000. And again, those costs aren't going to be effective today. I'll bet you for an asphalt speed hump, you're in the $7,000 to $8,000 range today would be my guess. But nonetheless, I guess my point of this discussion on this slide is that this particular road was about 23% more just, in the overlay cost to replace the speed humps. So it's just a thing to think about. And as part of that story. Yeah,
Saying the cost is about 3,000 if we do it in-house and about 7 if we contract out.
yes, I'd say it's probably in that ballpark.
You replaced these asphalt ones with concrete.
We did, yep.
And would that be how we would do speed humps in the future, is with concrete?
Well, probably, but there's probably debate to go either way. I mean, it depends on how permanent that speed hump is. If it's a speed hump that's effective and the neighborhood loves it, I'd probably put them back in concrete, just because at that point, once it's in concrete, we probably won't do any maintenance on them other than you rotomill and you pave right up to it and you skip it and go to the next. And so, so the answer is maybe.
Benview, just as an example, has asphalt speed humps. And I don't think there's been any work on those for 20+ years, so.
Yep, there hasn't been. Yeah, until we overlay the road, we generally don't have to do much to them. They just sit there and get in the way of drivers. So do their thing.
And I appreciate your presentation. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Taking your time and to study about this. Sometimes the numbers are great, but also sometimes people that area, they know the best. You agree with me?
Sure, yeah, no, I understand that. Yep.
So I think right here, the people, they come in here and they multiple times, not only once, but they multiple times, and they complain about the traffic and also accident in their neighborhood. The road right now, Pam will ride right now, has a dip, I believe it's, kind of dip right there, but people, they don't see that. Sometimes people, the driver, they kind of virtually, they have to see something, but something right there, they don't see. When they have a speed bumps, people, they psychologically, they slow down. You agree with me with that?
Sure, yeah, so you're referring to the bumps that exist in like the cross gutters that cross across the road, is that what you're
Yeah,
talking
they're
about?
better than the dip. Okay.
Yeah, the dips are there for drainage. They're just there.
So that one, the bend wheel, and then it's opposite with the kind of versus with the Hamburg right. Yeah, Hamburg way, I'm sorry. The same thing with the 2320 South Redwood Road, 2320 South right here in Chesterfield.
Mhm.
And we didn't have the speed bumps, is a semi truck and people, they run too fast until we brought it multiple times. And until one case that happened was the Georgia school, the students walked across the Georgia school and the driver went too fast and hit that girl. Okay. And that happened to that thing. And then we put a speed bump and now it's slowed down. Basically, it's a semi truck. It's not there anymore, not going that route. They slow down because they see the speed bump, so they cannot go that fast. So I think it's the people.
Yeah, speed bumps can definitely be effective in slowing traffic. Yep, absolutely. Another aspect of speed humps, just like you mentioned with the semi truck, they'll divert to another route oftentimes. And so as we install speed humps, we need to consider parallel routes that they may be diverting to. And when we did speed bumps in Diamond Summit, there were several alternative routes. And so, which is why really most of that neighborhood has speed humps, because there were lots of ways to avoid the speed humps. And so that's definitely a thing that needs to be considered in building these. So this slide I put in here I call it the remind us that the main thing must remain the main thing, or the main thing is the main thing remain the main thing. And the main thing in this aspect is speed. Speed really is the most important element and should be the most important element in considering whether or not speed humps should be installed. Another element is traffic volume. And then of course, other things that are associated. I put this here just to remind us that that really the problem we're trying to solve is speeding. And as you consider changes to that policy, that just remain, that the main thing remain the main thing. So this is a repeat slide. This is just as we transition to the discussion of, okay, well, what if we were to change something, what would we change? This is just a reminder of what our current policy is. And as I go to the next slide, this is a summary of all of this study. So it's 336. I knew it was yeah. Couldn't remember if it's 230 or 330, but 336 speed studies since 2005. And this is them categorized by 85th percentile speed. And so you can see the large majority of these neighborhood speed study or speed complaints that we get, the 85th percentile is indeed 30 miles per hour. And at the bottom, in red and then green, that's just just to visualize how many points are available for certain speeds. So you get 0 points for 25 miles per hour because that's the speed limit. And then 10, 20, 30, up to 100 plus, depending on where you're at. So I thought this was helpful to visualize just the distribution of the speeds that we're seeing on these studies. And then this is, yes, sir.
Could you tell us more about how the study is conducted? How long are the devices
Counters, yeah.
on the
Yeah.
road, and where are they placed? Because on Palmer, if you put it close to that dip, then the speeds will be lower. If you put it more halfway between the dip and the four-way stop, where we've been seeing some of the problems, it might be a different story.
I'm going to let Eric talk about that process and he'll answer these types of questions.
Yeah, so
That's a picture of the county.
yeah, that's the
radar
new
counter.
one. So we don't use pneumatic tubes anymore. It's been about 10 years since we've used them regularly. We still have them and we can use them, but these radar devices, they count bidirectionally, right? So you point them kind of angled toward the road. We mount them on a light post or a signpost. I try to place them where it's kind of between intersections. So not close to a dip or anything like that, or a sharp curve, on the straightaways. So we try to place them as best we can that way, away from something that would slow people down, and give them a chance to speed up, right? So you don't want to place them right as they pull onto the road, right? You want to place it
Where their
down.
maximum speed.
Yeah, where we could get the maximum speeds. And so that's the goal, is to get the best picture. So we put them out 7 days, typically Monday to Monday, and pick them up. We try to avoid holiday weekends as much as we can. We avoid snow, although with the radar, we can put them out during the winter, whereas with the tubes, we couldn't. So now we can do a few more with the winter, if we need to, if there's no snow predicted, right? So.
Okay.
Do you know where it was placed on Palmer when we did our test?
I'd have to look at the map. We put them on our map, and I think we have a public facing.
I think we did.
That's where the counter was located on that map. But I'd have to look at the address.
One counter or two?
Two locations on Palmer. Yeah,
And so we took the higher of.
yeah, I always take the higher of the 2 or 3, sometimes 4. Just depends on the length of the road or the characteristics of the road, how many we put out.
So what is the purpose of the ones that show you your speed? Big ones on trailers.
So police department has those. It's just an awareness thing.
So it's not for a count of any sort.
They are capable of counting. I know Detective Millett does occasionally, but yeah,
The signs that we procured and installed in permanent locations.
Permanent
do not
radar.
count,
No, we don't
do
have
not
them
collect
count.
traffic data in those.
And we've done follow-up studies on those. They're fairly effective for a few years, to be honest. And they catch people's attention that aren't paying attention. So the people that aren't intending to speed, the ones that intend to speed, there's even speed humps won't slow them down.
Encourages them.
Yeah. Well, and they have an upper limit.
Right.
So they don't tell you you're going 50. They just stop or flash a
I think it only goes up to 10 miles per hour.
Usually
Don't
up to
ask me how I
30.
know that.
yeah. I won't.
Possibly 10 miles over.
Yeah.
You've heard.
I've heard.
Thank you. So we just talked about the speed study, the speed summary. From the same collection of studies, this is the ADT, the average daily traffic that we see on these roads. So these are kind of buckets of groupings that, most of the complaints that we get are on roads of around 500 to 1,000 vehicles per day. And, with our current criteria, you're getting 2.5 points for a 5,000 or a 500 vehicle load. And you can see as it progresses forward from that. So other criteria, these are the extra points that we give for site for, if the road doesn't have sidewalks, we give it 5 points. If it's near pedestrian generators like schools or things like that, we give points for that. Or I would suggest if we're changing things that we actually put a cap on that. Again, that the main thing remain the main thing. And then that I believe is my last slide, just reminding us where things are at. And so at this point, I've summarized kind of where we are and what our data looks like. And if the council has a desire to change the policy, we'd love to hear the discussion and that really is my presentation.
If you were going to suggest a change to the criteria to increase the amount of speed humps that we put in a year, what would be your suggestion?
I would suggest starting slowly with speed, and really if you feel like that 100-point threshold is too high, then you take it down a notch, and maybe this might be a more illustrative thing to think about is what is that, what is that speed that you're trying to really keep these vehicles down at? Obviously, we want them driving at 25 miles per hour. But people's behavior, we're trying to control them with a physical device that makes them drive slower. And so we don't necessarily have a number, really, I guess the direction, if the direction from the council is we want to see more speed humps, then we could propose something that that might, you lower this, you could lower that red line to some number and we'll start seeing more speed humps. And so don't know that we necessarily have a proposal for you.
Kind of separate to that, Tatterley and Charles are pretty similar. They're long, straight, have similar grade issues. We've got the signs, flashing signs at Charles, but so I know they're speeding there too, but
Eric's done a lot of work on Charles, and I think the easiest thing that you could do for Eric would be to tell him we're going to put speed humps everywhere. Because then he's making everybody happy, which of course is not my recommendation. But he's dealt with, Charles is definitely a road that he's dealt with for a long time.
It's our first major testing of speed signs too.
Some of the citizens on Palmer have put out there that maybe they would be willing to pay for the speed humps. Any thoughts on how that would work?
I don't like the recommendation just because I think they should be based on need. And because again, as I spoke to before, the money is not the reason we're not, it's not lack of money. We have, we could find enough money to build a speed hump when there's a need for a speed hump. But my recommendation would be to not necessarily open it up to a pay to build kind of a scenario. And I don't think that's how we should manage the roads like that.
How many traffic studies can we have a year? Is there a limit? You guys, I don't want you doing it every week, but
Well, we are, by policy, we've stated that we'll do one study per street per year. We won't keep going out and doing more studies on the same road.
Well, and part of the reason when I came on as a city traffic engineer originally, that I created this petition system was because the engineering division was doing a traffic study for every complaint that they received, which was hundreds a year, right? Which took up one person full-time year round, basically, right? And so, and most people, they just see a car speeding on their short little street and think, oh, the world's ending and all our kids are gonna be hurt and, you know, and they get upset and they call and complain. And so I wanted to put a little bit of responsibility back on the citizens to say, hey, let's talk to my neighbors, and if we're all as a community want this, let's ask for it. And that actually cut down quite a bit. We went from doing several hundred a year to obviously, 30 to 40 maybe at the most in a year. But we have the capacity to do more. We could buy more counters. It's not difficult. It's just, responding to every complaint is time consuming. When it's not serious, right? One person.
Well, I was just curious, instead of considering a change in criteria, would it be, could the council make exceptions on certain circumstances? And I don't want to discount other studies that have happened and residents say, well, I got the same score and I didn't get that, but
Yes.
could we make exceptions on a case by case?
The council certainly could. You just then become the way that speed humps get built, and you may not want to do that.
Well, in this case, I support him to have the speed bumps for that. Seem like they communicate multiple times and they were concerned about it. It looked like long road, Palmer Way and also Benview all connecting to each other, and I think it's a good way to do that for them.
Mr. Piles, you had a comment?
Question on the Benview Palmer comparison again. So there's no difference in accidents. Would you expect that if there were no speed humps on Benview, you'd have more accidents? Or are the roads similar enough, construction, length, speed, type?
I don't anticipate, I've looked at a handful of roads that have speed humps and don't, at the map with the dots for the crashes. And I can't distinguish a pattern of roads without, I haven't done a thorough study, but I don't think that I don't anticipate a lot more crashes on a road without speed humps. I think really the crashes that you get on a road with or without speed humps in a neighborhood generally are either, it's the exception that the vehicle that's out of control that we've heard about, or it's a lot of distraction from people that, again, most of these are parked cars. And so.
So speed isn't really
I don't know that it is
delineating or the determining, at least for crashes. Speed is speed, and people are uncomfortable if they don't like that, and you feel uncomfortable in your neighborhood. So maybe that's good enough of a criteria to do the speed humps anyway.
Sure.
But they're not changing the accident data.
I don't, at least I have one study here, that one road that, that's right next to each other, that has with and without. And, it's not an awesome sample size, but just looking at this, I don't know that I would anticipate much change.
What's going on in West Jordan? Do you have enough data to understand why they're going away from doing this?
I think just as, I think it's the political, I don't know. I really don't know.
Driven, they have too many of them and they don't like them, don't know. We don't really.
I don't know. And honestly, some of their speed humps are really high and uncomfortable. We've built speed humps that are designed to keep, if you're going over them at 20-25 miles per hour, it's actually not a bad little, it's not going to throw you through the roof. But I could see, I guess I don't know the answer to that question. I don't like their speed humps. They're really tall and short and unpleasant. And so maybe they get a lot of feedback on the unpleasant nature of their speed humps, but
And what about the ones that you said we're about to do or are doing still in this season? Where are they? Where are we still
it
doing?
is on in this Oker Mesa Drive, yeah, out in not west of Diamond Summit, what is that? Sunset Hills, yes, Sunset Hills, Oker Mesa Drive. And then, yeah, and yes, we're also going to do a little bit of a test of some speed cushions. They're called on Beagley Lane. There's a bit of a racing problem that our police department's asked for some help. There's like black tire marks on the white concrete pavement where they do the 1/4 mile drag strip. And the speed cushions that we're going to build out there are short and they have little kind of flat openings that are wide enough for a wide vehicle to, like a semi truck, to not necessarily come down into a complete stop to go over a speed hump. But the speed humps are higher, kind of in the middle where a vehicle would go. So that we're hopeful that this solves the racing problem that exists out there.
So what was the criteria met on that one?
There was no criteria. It was,
Because it's a business district, you just did it,
well, we haven't done it yet, but
but that's why you're doing
we're
it.
intending to do it because there's it's because of the public safety element is a police problem that exists on that road.
Okay. So
It's really
Palmer,
just a test. I mean, they would be temporary asphalt on concrete. Like, we're not excited about the methodology, but it's kind of a temporary test to try to make those racing problems go elsewhere. And if it goes away, I'd like to take them out.
so the difference between Palmer and Benview. Did Palmer have any accidents hitting parked cars? Or was it only Benview that had that?
It's like 4 of the 6 are parked cars.
Too lazy to put them on?
Yeah, there's 5 on Benview and 4 on
But
Palmer.
I think you're missing that they said they had 3 in the last 9 months.
So she also, the information that they gave you cited an accident that occurred on June 13th, 2023. And I have that accident, but it was well within, it was at least a third of the way into Benview. So that's where I counted that accident, but I don't know, if my data is wrong, then it's wrong, but that's the data that I have from the state, so.
Okay, and then the other thing, and maybe I misunderstood what they said that night. To me, I interpreted that it was somebody coming from the north to the south and not making the turn. Did I misunderstand
I don't know,
that
but
statement?
that particular crash, like
But-
the dot on the map.
Keep going into her yard.
It's the curve, the little.
Oh, that little curve at the top. But that's on Benview, but not Palmer.
I know.
So there's that curve in Palmer. I think that's
Yeah.
what they.
It's that one?
they are
Okay.
talking.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and I'm not sure what, the accident that they mentioned, she did say in her letter that there was a June 13th accident. But there was a June 13th accident, but it was definitely on the Benview side. So where that vehicle was coming, I don't really know, but.
Okay, so it wasn't a
coming
Palmer.
from.
And I don't know if Benview is any wider, but it feels wider because it's straight, I think.
It might, yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it is or not. I haven't checked, I don't know.
Okay, because I know I went to one neighborhood party and they had a car that kept getting hit because people just didn't turn.
Yeah.
So you guys put in one of those signs that point both ways, have arrows both ways, showing
Oh,
this
at
is a dead stop,
intersection? Okay, yeah,
because it's just a curve. There's no way to go that way.
yeah.
And they said that has really helped them. And so that's what I thought would help on Palmer. So is this slide not on our? Because I have looked.
If you
I'm just
refresh
blind.
it, it may come up. So
It was
we
added late.
got that one.
This is a late ad.
Yeah, although I remember this being in the earlier presentation months ago. When we did it, wasn't it? Or was it
No,
not?
this is new.
Accident, data request was made
Yeah.
later.
Yes, this is new.
Refresh.
Okay, and then my other question is, how much interaction do you have with the citizen that is requesting? Do you ask them how many schools there are? Do you ask them if there's a bus stop? that just happened on because there was an earthquake and that school now has to bus?
I don't, I
Do you
mean,
talk to the residents and ask all the questions? Or do you just,
Occasionally, but pretty much know where all the schools are.
but do you know all the schools that, like the charter schools that the kids walk to? Okay.
yeah,
So
Eric
you want
actually
someone
works.
that says 5
quite-
schools?
Yeah, Eric works quite a bit with,
Didn't show a bus stop and they have a bus stop now because of the earthquake. And they have 5 schools. It shows 3. Okay,
are you
so
talking about?
something just get
Stanchi?
missed. So maybe a good recommendation would be to speak to the actual resident. Because there hadn't been a bus stop there until the earthquake. And then,
And also, like my recommendation would be to, on those other points, because they are pretty subjective. My recommendation would be to put an upper limit on these other points that are considered. That are kind of add-on to the speed and the volume points. So,
so can you rent a gun or get a gun to see how fast people are going on your street? In a circle, I don't get that as much, but long streets, people do.
I have just a sport radar gun that I'll go out with anybody that requests it. I tell people when I talk to them, I say, hey, I'll come and we can watch traffic and I've done it in the past with an officer as well, with their actual calibrated official radar guns. You know, and you stand there and you say, okay, how fast was that car going? Oh, at least 40. No, I was going 22. Yeah, the perception when you're standing on the street is you feel like it's going faster, especially if it's a loud vehicle. Or there's like a bumpy road. You feel like it's faster. That's a perception issue, but yeah, occasionally. But it is available. I'll go with them. I'll loan it to them if they want to do it on their own without me there. If they think I'm biased. Like Dan said, if I would be super happy to put speed bumps on every long straight road we have.
Well, especially when they're joining, you don't have points if it joins 2 major. Like if it's the
Your
up
neighbors-
through 31 to 35th that everybody uses. You don't have that criteria, and that's a big one, I think. So
That's it.
I think we should bring it back. I was hoping there was suggestions at the end of this.
well,
But
I guess we
need
wanted
to
to
bring
get a
the
feel.
phone back and,
If,
pardon?
I guess we wanted to get a feel from the council. Do you want more speed humps? Are we good? Like, and if you want more, do we want a lot more? Because if you take Palmer, for example, it's not that close to, with the current criteria,
Speed bumps, yeah.
it's not that close for speed humps.
Right.
So it would be a pretty substantial change to change the policy to make it work for Palmer. You could also make exceptions, as was suggested before, that exceptions saying, I want speed humps on that road and we'll go do it. But yeah, and so I guess we would like to have a really a good understanding of if you feel like we're not capturing the real problem and we need to go harder on the speed hump side, we can certainly do that, and we'll make some recommendations on policy changes. Thresholds. And really, my shoot from the hip suggestion would be you start with start small, go with like a 10-point thing. I just don't want to swing that pendulum too far in the opposite direction and react heavily to certain complaints. I'd rather try to keep it in that. Well, I'd rather start small, but we also might not see results quickly if we started small too, so.
Sure, and I think I would be in favor of reducing the speed. So you get more points for speed, and then also, when you're that close to schools, I mean, you can throw a rock to both schools, I think you gotta get double points. You're gonna have higher concentration of kids on those streets. Those are my 2 things, if I was going to adjust the criteria. And then if we were going to have like a city council override, to where we could just say, I would want signatures of everybody on that street, you know, like 95% of everybody has to sign off on it, because we're not gonna override unless the street wants it, so. That's what, I don't know, it's my feel.
Well, what are the two elementary schools next to Palmer?
There's really. only-
It's one's a junior high.
Okay, so the
Kennedy
junior high is the next one. It
and
just says no
Palmer.
junior highs and I'm thinking that's just barely north of
Probably
Kennedy.
should have maybe called
Okay.
it two, it's
They
two
got-
schools.
They got 2
Yeah,
points.
one and
But I
one.
called them,
Trail
yeah,
then.
5 and 5 is what it should have been. Yep.
Okay.
I labeled that.
I just knew there was.
I think maybe 5 points for the trail along the canal, that a lot of people trying to get to that canal from that neighborhood
Oh, yeah.
will walk along Palmer to get up over Charles to get to that trail.
Yeah, there are definitely lots of those types of things that we could add to the cut criteria. And again, my personal opinion and suggestion is that those ought to be limited. And maybe it's not 10, maybe it's 15, 20, whatever, you know, however the council feels about that, but there's just some subjectivity that could be brought into the process that is subjective. And those kind of exist to really throw a road over the fence that's really close. They get you there the rest of the way if you haven't, you know, if you're not quite there on speed, but it's close, it's like, well, you've got a school, you've got another thing.
What you're,
Sorry.
that's okay.
And I know speed is the number one thing that you want to focus on, but really, I think safety is the number one thing you
Absolutely,
should
that's the
focus
goal.
on,
Yep.
especially when you've got kids. I think that ought to be more highlighted.
Sure. Yeah.
So I did not pay attention to our other two councilmen. Did they have any comments while we were speaking? Okay, thank you. I forget to watch for that.
Just one last thing.
Okay.
It's hard to understand why Benview has it and Palmer doesn't, so.
Yeah, well, and those were installed before this criteria ever existed. And so
Nobody here today was here then, so we don't know.
I was here.
Okay.
And I can tell you why.
Oh, why?
Dan,
Because they had the exact, Don probably was here too, but because they had the exact same resident citizen dynamic that you're having right now. You had a particular group of people who wanted change on the street. And so they came in and advocated for it. And so we went through the process and made the decision of the council. I can't remember if they met the criteria or not at that
I
time.
don't think there was criteria.
Council just decided, you know what, we got enough concern here in the neighborhood, we're gonna go ahead and do it. It was also newer, so we were trying out different techniques as well.
And I believe it's things, sorry, go ahead, Don. Mr.
they
Christensen.
put those in the mid-80s.
Okay. Then.
So-
Well,
so
before any of
that-
that.
While
Yeah, but a road like that is not, I'm not just suggesting that Benview does not merit them or anything, but that process really is, I guess, the public clamor request process really ought to be backed by some kind of a policy that allows you to be consistent throughout the city, which is our goal with this. And so, anyways.
I can't remember if it was Will or who asked the question originally, but it was a pertinent question that, yeah, all this is really designed to do is give you guys data and backing for whatever your decisions you are making. You can change that for any particular group or project that comes in if you want to. Certainly, all this does is hopefully help you guys navigate that. If you do it for one, what are you going to do for the next group that comes in?
That's why the council making exceptions here and there doesn't make me real comfortable, but
Right, it is better
it
to
can be done.
make
It'd
some
be-
policy changes for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
And maybe
I
the
would rather
policy is
be-
that, you know, it could be based on the length of the road plus speed, or, because we don't see speeding problems on short roads.
Right.
I guess, I don't know.
You
maybe
have the
we
same
can-
perception problems.
Yeah,
Remember
yes, you
that
can't.
gentleman that was in about a year ago, and when we went and did the study, it turned out his street was.
He was
much
below the
longer.
speed limit, I believe. Yeah, we do a lot of studies that have a speed somewhere between 19 and 25 miles per hour. as the 85th percentile speed, which doesn't mean that there aren't speeders on those roads as well. There's a curve. And the ones that cause us the problem are the few speeders at the top end of that curve that are driving really fast.
Well, I was going to mention, I would be I think, more willing to make an exception. It doesn't sound like there's much of an appetite, but I would be willing to make an exception rather than a criteria change. My only hesitation would be if the next one that comes through, if they get a 68 or 70, that staff doesn't say, well, all you need to do is rally your neighbors.
The case that could be made for Palmer may be that it's part of a network of speed humps that already exist. It's the same road. If you were to, if that one was a desire, but it's also, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, Charles and Dino.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if the, so from a policy standpoint, if we feel like we'd like to see more speed humps as a result of the studies, we probably need to lower the threshold because we're not getting them anymore very often.
But then it frankly, we recognize this is the people in that area, Palmer Drive, where they're actively engaged.
Sure.
You agree with me? Yeah,
Of course.
they came here multiple times. So I mean, I give them credit for that.
Oh,
I can go,
And it might be beneficial for Eric to spend some time with them as well with the radar gun. We'd be happy to do that, to have him or his people spend some time with them and, or give them the radar gun and let them get a feel for it. We're not saying that there's not a problem with speeders, because there are. We know that people speed on those roads. And we're just trying to manage it wisely and use data to make decisions. And
so I can make an exceptional case. I can give them what they like.
So oh, sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm done.
No, I was gonna say, on these roads that are a particular problem, couldn't our officers do the reports there instead of where they do them now?
understand.
So they sit in their cars and do reports. And most of the time it's in back of a parking lot. Couldn't they sit on this road and do the reports and just calm people down just for the presence? Not even gonna have my gun out, not gonna do anything, but just do my reports, but I'm visually there.
Sure.
And if it's random enough, people may just stop speeding. I mean, that's the one that might be able to happen that doesn't take much work.
Giving work to the police department.
Well, I'm probably getting daggers behind me, so, but it's all good. So,
I did have one other question on the ones that are in the band there between speed hump and traffic calming. So if my four eyes are at least close, it seems like there's about 35-ish of them that are in there, which would be like 10% of the total.
Oh, yeah.
If you knock down the speed criteria 2, 3,
about
5, how many, or do you have a feel for how many of those would then fall into the speed hump area?
We would definitely, really, I think what we'd see would be a lot of the roads that have obviously qualified for signs being kind of converted over to speed humps. And so I haven't done any math to get a feel for what that would look like. I could guess that, you drop it from to 90 for the being the threshold, and you'll double the number of speed humps probably.
Okay.
Double the number of studies that
And-
meet the criteria.
And just from a crew resource standpoint, again, that seems to be our real limiting factor. as
Yeah.
well as the
It does.
cost. So how many a year can you do with the existing?
If we did more than a few a year, I would have the engineering division put together a project and bid it. Move some of the resources to take people away from our asphalt maintenance activities to
So how many is a few in your mind? 4, 6, 3?
a week's worth of speed humps, which is 463, yes,
6, okay, all right.
somewhere in there. I mean, it's not a lot, but we certainly, right now, at the rate that the roads are qualifying, yes, of course, we can build those in-house and save a little bit of money, and it's good fill work between slurry seal and transitioning to other types of operation of maintenance work, but at a larger scale, we'd have to bid something out.
What do the speed signs cost?
They're about $5,000 a pair.
So it's cheap, almost the same as in-house speed
Bumps.
Yeah.
Well, it's usually more than one speed bump though.
Yeah, we'll build speed humps in a network. Roughly like 800-foot spacing, somewhere in there,
300 to 500 feet.
300 to 500 feet. Yeah. So
And how often do you put the traffic calming, the signs?
Usually a pair per one segment of road.
So the same segment of road? One at the beginning, one at the end, or every 300 to 400 feet?
2855, how many did we do on that? Is there 2 pairs? I think there's 2 pairs on 2855. So, and I can go back and show you that road. You can feel for it, so.
And how many speed bumps would have gone on there?
Well, probably 4 or
I
5.
can't tell.
I'd imagine.
Probably 5.
5 for how long it is?
Yeah.
It is by a school, so, okay.
Is there, I mean, if they're, let's pretend that they were the same money. Is there a reason why we wouldn't want to do speed bumps? If they're the same money and
I don't know. I mean, I would say it's these same things. It's the
the
public doesn't love them and it's, I don't have again, it ends up being a thing that we have to maintain. And so, but at the same time, you've got, they work, they lower speeds.
I did see an article that, and this is probably way more expensive than we want to spend, but they only deploy when the speed exceeds a certain amount.
Oh,
So
that'd be awesome.
They're like heavy duty rubber metal and they come up when
So if you have
I
an
prefer the trap door solution, but I don't know if that's gonna work.
it spikes, but
That would be cool. Smart humps.
That would be nice, because then we're actually addressing the real problem,
Really, that is the problem.
The problem is that the tail end of that curve, the head of that curve with the people, the very few number of people that drive and that really make people nervous.
Well, and my thing is a child. They don't have the perception to gauge what speed a car is going. And so the loss of one child puts all the cost to me totally aside. Money, it's the loss of a child. And if you're speeding on there, it's just not worth it. So,
Eric confessed to me the other day that he doesn't mind speeding on other roads, but he refuses to speed in neighborhoods, like it's a personal, because it is so important and dangerous and.
right, but people don't always connect that.
Yep. Not that he speeds a lot. I've driven with him. He's a good driver. But he certainly has a great deal of respect for neighborhood streets.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, yep.
In Park City, they changed the speed limit on residents to 20.
Yeah.
Miles per hour. Do they do that
Salt
in
Lake City as well.
Salt Lake City as well?
And in Hawaii. It's always been that.
Yeah.
It's miserable. I won't go back for that
Has
one
that,
reason.
Has that made a difference in Salt Lake City? Do we know?
I don't know that I have, it's so new that I don't think we have any data on what that's looked like.
It stopped people from cutting through neighborhoods.
I don't know. It's a sign.
In my experience,
Just as well as they-
behavior.
Could be true.
Hey, this is Jake. Sorry, I've been quiet. I'm trying to soak all this in, and as I'm distilling a lot of this information, and thank you for the very evidence-based. This has all been very intuitive, but I guess from a policy perspective, I guess what I'm breaking it down to is the dichotomy of either if budgeting is or finances is not the limiting factor, and if we do feel that speed humps are effective, not just at mitigating speed and potentially tragedies in the neighborhoods, but also at responding to residents in their concerns. I guess to me, we're looking at two questions. One is either are we willing to reduce the threshold, right? The score that these speed studies have to reach before we authorize speed humps, or do we allow more flexibility? I guess that might be the wrong word, but more allowance to look at some of those nuanced subjective factors. I know there's a proposal to limit those to 10 points. I think in my preference would be, I would rather have a numerical score that we can use to justify the decisions that we're making, rather than having leeway as a council to sort of override or give preference to certain proposals or requests. So that's where I'm stuck, is kind of like, okay, well then blanket, do we just lower the threshold and make it quote unquote easier for some of these studies to qualify for speed humps, or are we willing to allow more allowance for the more subjective elements there to help us make those decisions? I guess that as long as budget is not a factor and we all agree, or at least 4 of us agree, that allowing more speed humps is a good idea, in my mind, that's kind of where I'm stuck. Is, do we reduce the threshold across the board, or do we keep it as is and just allow for more points to be gained for some of these really local, specific, subjective kinds of criteria?
Okay, thank you.
Do we get people complaining that there's too many speed humps?
I think at first you do, but they go away. And the example of the Salt Lake City thing, I don't know what's gonna come of that 13th South speed hump. But we don't generally get complaints from people that after they're built. But
Did ones on Wakefield.
we also did a pretty heavy public involvement process when we put them in Island Summit.
Okay.
We did open houses. And
They voted.
they voted, the neighborhood voted, right? Yeah. So.
I mean, I think you said it also, the signs don't really work.
You mean a traffic sign? Yeah.
Not long term.
And so, I mean, I don't know if that's a good use of budget money, is even doing those.
Well, the radar signs have an effect. They do something. I wouldn't say that those don't work. But if you're, my suggestion earlier was like just putting up 20-mile-per-hour signs. I don't think
Right.
really does a lot. Generally, drivers, and you may relate to this, but drivers will generally drive at the speed that they feel is comfortable. And so roadways are designed for certain speeds. We have a design speed, with the curves and the vertical elements all match, fit with that particular design speed. And if the road's wide enough and flat enough, people will drive fast. And so where possible and where we have an impact when subdivisions are being laid out, we will make suggestions to minimize the long straights and to add bends to things that can really slow down the traffic in the long term.
But do the bends cause more parked car accidents?
That's
Is
possible.
that what you were saying earlier?
May well be. Don't know.
I know,
Yeah,
it seems like there's not a great one solution.
no.
So is there enough consensus to ask staff to come up with some recommendations? Jake seemed like he wanted recommendations. Anybody else? Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah,
Okay,
well, I don't know if we need them to come back with recommendations. I mean, there's not a lot that they could do. I think lowering the threshold is the major.
Yeah, I'd say if you want us to do something, we could lower it down to 90 and lower we could either keep the traffic calming for the signs, keep that threshold where it is, or lower it as well. Just depends on how the council feels about this.
I'm supporting that.
I'm not excited about the traffic calming. I think it's less effective, but I am in favor of lowering the threshold for speed humps and adding extra points for elementary schools and maybe some of those other local things.
Well, and have all of you looked at one of the traffic study reports? What's on it? You may want to email one of those out to all the council members too,
Sure.
because not all of them are on this list.
You say not all of them, you mean not everything in the report?
What else is there?
Because I got a new poll about, there was a bus stop and they didn't report a bus stop and there were 5 schools and they only reported 3 schools. Believe me, on Staten Drive, I heard
Which is,
I heard it all.
I know you have, and I'm sorry for that.
That's okay. It's okay. I
And
still
is
like
the
the
study
person.
given back to the people that?
Uh-huh.
that,
Yes, he gives them the results back.
Call and talk to them, or I send them a letter.
We're missing some.
Or both. So if we change the criteria, would we go back and hit all those that?
Well, I think they'll
That would
reapply.
not be my recommendation. Then we could come into a resource problem.
Let them reapply if they want to. Mhm.
I think it would be helpful to come back, and if we do change the criteria, to see what that impact would have had on those prior.
Sure,
That's a good idea.
we can do that.
Okay.
So I'm kind of feeling like maybe we'll look and see what a 90-point threshold would do for speed humps. And we could, well, I could either email that out, or we could do this again in this format, whichever you prefer.
I think that would be a good format.
It's been great.
And is a month unreasonable?
No.
Okay. Because I remember last time it's been a year since we had a discussion, a full discussion about it.
Look how good we did. It was a really nice presentation.
Yeah.
That's the way, right?
So, okay, in 1 month's time, we'll revisit this one. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, debt service schedule review. And I appreciate that you asked for this one to be held for Jake and I to be here. So is this all payables we have?
It's
I mean, as far as debt or bonds?
Yep.
From every department?
callable and uncallable. There's 3 callable ones that we talked about last week. One of those is being paid off. The other 2 are at the bottom there and have very low current interest rates.
Oh, these 2 are this one here.
The
and
2,
that one
yeah.
there. And then
Twenty
which,
twenty tax increment, and the 2021 road revenue.
and then what was the other one? 2020?
2020 and the 2021 road revenue.
And then the other question I had, just to catch myself up from last time. Was to do about Embassy Suites. So did that not get paid off when we sold Embassy Suites?
No, we still hold the debt. It's just being paid by the owner. Think of it like as a contract.
Oh, as
Contract
self-finance,
ownership, right, yeah.
okay. And that's the interest we're getting off that, or they're paying on that,
They're paying the whole payment on
okay. And then. Do you guys have other questions before I just sit and ask all mine?
Maybe I'm just not seeing it. Where's the bond that for the cultural center that started at 15 and now is 50?
It would be 50 by the time you pay all the
Yeah.
interest,
Yeah.
right? So it's showing the current balance what it is today, but by the
When
time.
is it then?
So which bond is that?
it. It's the
2010?
The Maverick Center, Cultural Center one?
Is the
It is the 2010, yes.
Okay, so another version of this that I saw had that we borrowed 14. Right now it was 55 and it pay off in 34 or 44 was going to be 75.
Yeah, I'm not sure which one that would be. Are you talking about the cultural center still? Or
Awesome.
just a different?
I think it was
Piece
the
of that.
cultural center, but I didn't see the current balance. The original and the current are the same, but with the interest from when it was borrowed to now, it wouldn't be 14,466. On that last report I got, and I almost called Nicole and said, can you find that in our, within the last 3 months, we've discussed that? And okay,
So.
the one that we haven't been making payments and we're just starting.
Right, yeah, that is the 2010 sales tax refunding. It ends up being 50 million total. This is from last week's attachment. Then a different one was asked for this week with the interest rates added, which for
Okay,
whatever reason, this time didn't have the
current,
the amortization schedules on it. Yes, that's 2010 sales tax revenue refunding bond. 50 million total across time with principal and interest.
okay, so the balance right now with interest is not on here. Correct? Is it the same as the
Yeah, right,
original?
it's showing that, and I guess outstanding, Jim, you'd have to speak to this. I mean, outstanding is just what the outstanding balance is
The
today
current principal today.
without the interest accrued.
Absolutely, because the interest accrues on an ongoing basis and then these.
All right,
So I would like this with all the current interest
so
on them.
you do have that.
Oh, where
It's
is it? I
last
missed it.
week's item, I believe,
Please.
if I'm understanding the question correctly, but yeah, if you go back and pull up the
The file.
12, you should
Study.
be able to see that.
Sorry, I didn't know.
No, that's fine. I thought we were putting on exactly what we had last week, except just adding interest rates to the profile summary here, but that's.
It doesn't
not-
have the balance difference either on that one.
Page, it's got 13 pages.
Oh, it has,
Yeah, so right there.
Yeah.
Or I'm sorry.
okay, yeah, it
That's
is.
the one.
That could have been my problem. I didn't go to all the other pages last week either. So, okay, and then the funding sources to pay all these,
All on the first one, the profile, the one you have for today.
not this,
Uh,
not last week's.
This is source. Yeah.
Yeah, not last week's, the one you have today. Source,
How
second
did I
column.
not do
So they're all either general fund or RDA.
Or RDA, which, by the way, just for general interest, is split roughly about half and half.
So the RDA makes their money for the Maverick Center and the fire stations from the city paying that, right? A lease agreement type thing?
Yeah,
Or those
from-
lease
or from-
revenues?
Or from tax increment that is generated by the property.
Okay, oh, by the property
area,
taxes?
Yeah, property taxes. In just that area, just the RDA project area. So you remember in the RDA, there's like 16 areas. Each one generates its own tax increment.
Okay, so for the Maverick Center and the fire stations, city center is paid through tax increment. What is revenue refunding for them all?
That's going to be a refinanced or an older refunded lease. Which one are you looking at? The 2016
2016, yeah, sorry.
refund Valley Fair Mall and others. Yeah, that would have been a refinance that was done at that time of earlier debt.
And the funding source for that is still,
Tax increment and or any other, do you know?
All
any other
RDA.
source?
City
All
centers,
RDA.
all RDA.
Well, I
It's
know,
all
but-
generated off the tax increment, correct?
Correct.
All generated off the tax increment. So that's the
Okay.
property tax amount that's above what the original property tax assessed valuation was
When it was
before the
clear
project area. No, not when it was clear land,
oh,
when the mall was there,
okay,
but it was the older
Yeah.
valuation from when that date, which wouldn't be the 2016, it would have been the original project area date. Everything above that, valuation wise, then
Comes in.
goes into tax increment. That's how RDAs generate their money and their income.
and they have plenty of income to do all that.
They do. The only
Okay.
one that's any question at all of these are just fine. Most of them are straight amortization schedules. None of them are any question from that standpoint. The only one that is different at all is the cultural center one. Why? Because this SAR legislative enacted funding source was put together way back then. And the lumpy, so to speak, amortization schedule that's on there was determined by that SAR schedule as it was predicted back then. RDA does not believe that that's going to happen now at this point. My memory and understanding of that is because of legislative changes, once again, that changed that status. So what you would have from a cultural center standpoint, if you wanted to change it, is you would go do a couple of different things, some of which we're doing and have been doing anyway. Like, for example, we would go back to the legislature from a lobbying standpoint and say, hey, we were set up under this situation. We'd like to extend that or change the schedule or whatever and reenact such that the SAR money would be there and reenacted. Another way you could handle that would be from RDA dollars that are generated in the project areas, but then voted on by the RDA board as a council to move them that way. There would be other ways to do. You could combine that with a refunding and refinancing, which frankly, if you were going to do anything, that's what my recommendation would be for operational purposes in the RDA. But that would inevitably also add to that schedule and debt. So you may not want to do that.
But it's not callable, so how would you?
What you would do is go issue a piece of debt and then you hold that debt and make the payments according to whatever the tax increment schedule was coming along. But you would hold that money and then just pay out whatever the schedule was on the other side, right? For the
Does it
original
become
debt.
callable anytime soon?
It's never callable.
It's never callable.
Understandable.
So when did they take away SAR?
I don't know.
But we haven't worked on getting it changed around?
We have been working on that.
Okay.
In fact, that would be the number one strategy for extending that. So that both would not be an issue from any other fund balance, meaning the general fund or any other funds effect. Plus, it wouldn't unduly affect the RDA's operations either. So that would be best case scenario. Is it doable? Yeah, we've done that before, extending other areas and getting legislative help with that. It's something that's going to have to be worked on over the next couple of years. The good thing is your schedule there really doesn't ramp up for another 3 years anyway. So there's plenty of time to go and do that.
So if we've already started with the legislature, how are they feeling about it? What was their feedback?
I'd have to go get update or report from Lincoln or
Oh, okay.
Mark or both of them.
Okay.
This has been a long going effort for the last couple of years, though.
Yeah, that's why I was wondering if it's worth pursuing still, or if
I
they're just
think-
kind of,
Even if the response wasn't favorable right now, one of the things we obviously have learned in our many, many years of legislative lobbying is things change, leadership changes, motivations change. The discussion about RDAs changes every year. They change the names of them. They change the setups of them. So it's never, well, number one, it's never fruitless to continue the conversations. But number two, we always know it's going to change just because they tinker with it every year anyway. So you might as well be in the game trying to
get them to change that.
positively affect that. Yes.
Okay.
When Fitch assigns a rating and looks at total debt to total income, do they consider that? One, do they consider RDA debt, and do they also consider the hotel debt?
They definitely consider RDA debt. Pretty sure they include the hotel debt as well in their analysis of our financial standing, right?
They do. It mostly depends. They rate the bonds for the most part, not the city. And so when they rate the bonds, they look at RDA debt as how is the RDA paying for it? They look at the city debts, how the city paying for it. And they do cursory look at both of them together, but most of it's on the source of payment that's coming back to pay those bonds.
They look more harshly or conservatively, if you want to put it that way, on RDAs because they don't have full faith and credit of the city, but we've had really good success in the past with them on the RDAs.
So do we own the hotel?
We do not own it. As I was just saying to the mayor, we've sold it to Wasatch. It's in it, but we still have to hold the debt. So they pay through us to make the payment. Think of it as a contract sale of a property.
Yeah,
That's probably oversimplified, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
basically
oh,
the
it's the same
concept.
thing.
it's the same thing. I just-
Owner finance.
Most mortgages will allow you, they'll waive the callable part of that if it's a sale.
Sure.
This is not the case.
And even though this isn't, or that one particular, we haven't even been talking about, but even though any of these that say they're non-callable, there are always still things down the line you can do, like go and say, oh, hey, owners of the bonds, whatever remaining, the economic conditions have changed. Would you be interested in changing the call date or the call terms, that sort of thing? It's not normally done, but it can be done. It's an option.
Are they willing to do that?
Especially on the lower rates.
I doubt it.
Yeah,
In this
the lower
environment, I
rate
doubt it.
ones.
Yeah.
They
Rate
go
was
up.
They would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 those
refinance
lower
that.
rates are nice.
Right, yes, exactly.
Don't touch
So like,
those.
again, I mean, that's why it doesn't really make any sense to go
For
try
some
to
of them.
refinance the ones that are callable, right? Because they're the lowest rate
Yeah.
ones we have.
They're not costing you much, but the others are costing quite a bit. But if you get rid of the current callables, then you can put those payments towards your more expensive, the almost 7% ones.
Does that callable, if it's not callable, can you still make extra
Extra
principal
payments,
payments? Like
If
on a
it's not
mortgage?
callable, can
Yeah.
you still make,
extra
Extra
payments,
payments, yeah.
extra principal payments.
I don't believe you can, right?
Yeah, these are sold, when a bond is sold, they chop them up into annual or semi-annual increments.
Right.
And so if you pay something early, it just sits in the fund and accrues interest. It doesn't go back and pay off the debt until that bond comes up. So each bond issue just has a whole bunch of pieces. When they're paid, it pays off the shorter bonds first and moves throughout the.
So that technique still would work at a marginal level because you'd be, especially in today's environment, you'd be accruing a higher interest rate, right?
On some of them.
So you could sort of balance the two against your own book, so to speak, and you'd be making a net gain, but it wouldn't be paying down the actual bonds.
That's why people like these kind of bonds, because they're guaranteed long-term
for
and
sure.
it's set rate.
Exactly. So if I had any kind of recommendation at all, again, it would be let the RDA continue to pursue the SAR option so that there's really no effect whatsoever on the cultural center bonds, because that was originally how it was conceived or set up and actually approved, frankly, at the statutory level, that increment money would be coming in at that level in that schedule. And there's no reason we can't continue to pursue that. A second way to do that would also be to pursue other terms, like the mayor just sort of mentioned it. Other project areas that might be expiring, you might say, hey, we need to extend the lifespan of this project area, generate more funds, and then move those across, which would have to be done by council vote, but then use that to pay off. So there are a number of ways to approach it. The main point here really is there's no immediate emergency or worry or concern. And frankly, if there is any of them that has any concern, it's only that one, the cultural center schedule. And there are ways to deal with it.
Is that the $114 million?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tom,
Okay.
what?
The 14 million.
Yeah, the one that you've been asking
14,466.
about.
One other that I would just throw out there is the 2017 parking structure.
Mhm.
Early payoff date is 2027. It's the earliest payoff date. Well, there's another one that's a little earlier, but it's RDA. But we ought to be thinking maybe in the next 4 years, how do we restructure that or pay it down or? What can we
We
do
think
to
we can
reduce
get it off
that?
the books?
Maybe,
we-
Okay,
Okay, yes.
yeah, I just needed to.
but we've got 4 years to plan for that, you know?
Yeah, I will say that we always are doing that. And really frankly, we do that through Laura. Laura will come or Jim will get an idea and we'll go and say, hey, is this feasible or credible right now in the environment? What do you think? Would the bond sell? How much would we garner from a savings standpoint? And the other thing I would also say is, other than a really specific instance like the cultural center was in 210, when you had multiple issues flying at you all at the same time, I can't really even think of another piece of debt where we either extended it out or paid less. We may not have said, hey, we're going to pay more and pay faster, although I think we've done that, although I think we have done that as well. But I can't think of another instance where we said we're going to pay it slower. So we're pretty good at that. We bring refundings to you almost whenever any significant savings are possible.
And I think most of our debt is pretty reasonable debt. But cultural centers, obviously.
Yeah.
We all have heartburn on, but nothing we can do about that till 2035 looks like. So.
Maybe you can apply some area to do that, so kind of remind us.
Be good to talk about at least once a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or just
Or
the same,
reaccounting.
I
same
did
Scenario.
here, just review it.
review it
Review
every
once a
year,
year.
just like we've done.
Yeah, you guys used to ask for that as a council, and we did that. So whenever your pleasure is to go over that, Mayor Bigelow was really big with that. He'd like to do that.
I don't remember
There's
doing it
no
in
issue.
meetings as much.
So we
Maybe he did it
strategic
one-on-one.
Planning.
Yeah.
We like to do it there. And he would have us bring back charts and presentations. His concern was usually more, what's your overall debt level, as opposed to what's your rate and what's your schedule look like.
Yeah.
So that's how he would approach it.
We've got to look at the schedule now that we saw the cultural center schedule.
Yeah, so. well, Hey, I think I can find the rest of the stuff I'm looking for in last week's, and I'll go back and look at that. I don't want to take your time. Anybody else have any other questions? I don't see Jake or Don. So, okay, let's move on to the next item, which is John Flores, the city manager hiring process. Just an update.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Just a quick update. Anything changed from last week? The Affion, the firm we've hired, they are putting together their own kind of research on the city, structure, organization, history, just so that they're more prepared. And then they've also sent me dates that we are planning on them being out here to meet with each of you. Those dates are August 18th and 19th.
August is gone.
October.
October, that works.
October 18th and 19th. And I've been working with Angel, and she will be reaching out to you all to get things scheduled. And so in those meetings, they will really, I think I mentioned it before, but the purpose is to put together an ideal candidate profile based on their meetings with you to understand what you want, what you need, what the city needs. And from there, they will put together an entire brochure to present to you and get moving on this. Any questions?
Any questions from the council? Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
All right, our council calendar. Does anybody have any issues with it at this moment?
I think this.
Well,
is the
I'm gonna do
point-
that after.
Okay, all right. I couldn't remember.
I got
which
a
item it
system.
was. Okay, very good.
Okay, so any questions on the calendar? All right, we have one item on the calendar that we're gonna ask Jessica Hancock to come up and explain. She's with our victim services. And it'll be an activity we have next Tuesday. So she's gonna make sure we're prepared when she asks us to do it next Wednesday or Thursday,
Thank you.
Tuesday.
I am the Victim Services Coordinator. My name is Jessica Hancock. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And in preparedness for that, we are hosting an event, a domestic violence awareness event next Tuesday. It will be at City Hall in the main lobby from 4 to 6 p.m. And we're having sort of an open house type event where you're inviting the public to come and to write letters of support to victims of domestic violence. We will then take those letters and display them in City Hall along with our silent witness stands for the month of October. And I'll also be posting them on our Facebook page. So we would love to see all of you there.
Thank you. That's a really interesting concept because we've never had the letters before. So whoever came up with that, great.
I saw something similar and kind of adapted it to domestic violence, and we thought it would be fun to try something new.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So is there anything you want anybody to focus on in these letters or just words of encouragement?
Just words of encouragement and support.
Okay. Okay, any questions from the council? Okay,
Okay.
thank you so much. So if we don't have study session next week, just show up for fun. Otherwise, be here a little early for the 6:30 meeting because it'll be over at 6.
Sound like we're gonna have.
Oh, we're not gonna have the 6, so
Probably.
that's right. So no 6:30. So
You'd
just
still
show up.
make it like a ribbon cutting. We'll announce it and make sure everybody's aware.
Yeah,
And I don't know, maybe we're having a study meeting next week, so you may be here anyway.
yeah. So if we are, great.
Yeah.
If not, make the effort, please. Okay. Potential future agenda items. Council reports.
Went to the Country Meadows playground
Oh, yeah.
before this meeting. It was a nice park. And, there were a lot of multiple generations that were there for the ribbon cutting, parents that have played there when they were.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Nothing else? Okay. Strategic plan list. Did anybody have anything they wanted to bring up? Let's see. Thought.
Mayor,
Nicole sent me an email a couple weeks ago about upcoming scheduled communication items. Can you send another one?
I'm
And
not
and
sure.
include code enforcement and the QR code and that kind of stuff, so.
I can give you a QR code update. Apparently there's some issue in IT they're trying to resolve to make it work. So wouldn't be any point to put it on the courtesy notice till they have it actually functioning. So,
We can get a cool QR code and create it, has our logo on it.
yeah.
Can you really?
Yeah.
Oh. So my dog license renewal came in the mail. Does the online system work yet? Last year when I tried just logging in and renewing it, they said, the online system doesn't work here.
Mine says it does.
It does? So I can do it
Currently,
this
I see
time?
him nodding his head.
I mean,
so.
it might be down on occasion, but
Well, last year when I called, she said it had been down for a year. So
it
if
generally.
I do it this month, I'll be fine.
You should.
Okay.
If it's not.
I'll give it a try again.
But I'll check on it, but I'm pretty sure it's working, even at.
It's just the easiest way to do it. I
Sure.
have
Yeah,
my
I
little
agree.
porter
I'm
login
with you.
and I can just do it all at once.
That's exactly how I would want to do it. for
Okay.
Sure.
Last time I had a call and anyway,
Mayor.
okay, yep.
The
Mayor?
chat with the chief.
Oh, yeah.
I was on there and it was great, but I am wondering, it seemed like there were more participants. It shows how many people are on there when PD had their own Facebook. Is that coming back or?
We're faced with a dilemma on the PD Facebook page. And that is Facebook won't fix it.
Did
or
it get
at least-
hijacked?
Yeah. it did.
Okay.
Back
Hacked, whatever.
3 months ago, whatever it's been.
Okay.
And they're not saying they won't, they're just not saying when they will. So our option would be to start over and build a new one and redo it again, or just wait for them, hoping that they're going to do it. So that's what Sam and police are wrestling with from a decision standpoint right now.
Either way, it just seemed like there were more participants when it was ran through their own page rather than us page.
At some point, I'm assuming they're going to come to me and say, yeah, we give up on the Facebook side. We're just going to start a new one again. But I don't know at what point they'll want to do that.
Do you
There does
say-
seem to be a fake one out there.
Oh, there is a fake one?
Well, like my wife followed it and I said, I don't think it says West Valley PD or something similar. And says, I don't think you should follow that one. I don't know what it is.
I'll ask her and then give it to him and have them
Take a look, see if it's
report it
a
as fake.
different hack one or a different sort of fake parallel shadow government PD one. I don't know. Happy to look at it.
Okay,
Mayor,
all right. If there's nothing
Mayor?
else, there's just one more motion. Oh, did we need a closed session?
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I keep hearing.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
you hear Don.
And we stand adjourned.